Welcome everyone again. My name is Rita Giuffrida and I work for Trust IT Services. That is the company that is leading the communication dissemination activities for the BioDT project. Today, as you might know, it is a very special day for biodiversity in general because the 22nd of May marks the World Biodiversity Day. And we actually thought that as BioDT is really working on this field to celebrate it in a different way, in a special way, by organizing this webinar where we're gonna present to you the first prototype digital twin that we have developed. As you can see also from the title of the slides that I am presenting now, it is related to pollinators. So in the next hour, you will hear more about this prototype digital twin. You will meet the people, the developers of the prototype digital twin. So at the very end of this event, you can also interact with them and ask any questions you might have. So with this, I will move to my next slide. Okay, you can see the agenda for today. So after this brief presentation from my side, I will pass the floor to Volker Grimm, that will provide a general presentation of the BioDT project about the pollinator prototype digital twin. Then we will hear from Jürgen Gronenwald, that instead will do a little bit more technical presentation of the pollinators prototype digital twin. And at the very end, Kata Sarao will actually present the Shiny app. And so it will be a little bit more interactive and live demonstration of how you can also test and use the pollinators prototype digital twin on your own. Then feel free to ask us any questions you might have. We have a dedicated Q&A section for this, so feel free to also use it anytime with any information or curiosity you might have about this PDT. Today we are expecting to have more than 70 people that are coming from all around the world, and they are mainly represented by research institutions, by industries, actually from companies that are mainly working in the agriculture field. Then we have also representatives of the biodiversity research infrastructures and national authorities. As I was mentioning, we are expecting more than 70 people coming actually from 18 countries, so not only in Europe, but also in other continents. And with this, I would like just to remind you that in addition to this webinar, we have organized others. So in case you would like also to hear and learn something more about the main objectives of BioDT, feel free also to watch all the recordings and feel free to follow us on our social media channels to always be updated about BioDT. So with this, I would like to thank you again for joining this webinar today, and I will pass the floor to our first speaker, Volker Grimm. So Volker, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. So I hope you can now see my slides. Very good.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so I will provide an overview of the BioDT project and the pollinator prototype DT. So PDT stands for prototype DT. I am working at the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research in Leipzig. I'm also an emeritus professor of theoretical ecology in Potsdam. And you see the entire team here, which is behind the work which we will be presenting. Since most of you might not be familiar with the concept of a digital twin, but you also might have realized that it has become a kind of a buzzword, it's very important to know what it is and what it means in our context of biodiversity research. First of all, a digital twin is a model, and we all know that models are simplified representations. And often we go with relatively simple models just to explore ideas and concepts and demonstrate certain mechanisms. But why would you call a model a twin? Obviously, a twin, they are very, very similar, right? They're actually identical genetically. So obviously, these models are called twins to emphasize a high level of realism because they are meant to be used in real-world applications. So that would be, so to say, to use this metaphor here, a picture of myself, which is rather similar and much more than, of course, than the smiley. So that's the basic idea. So And when you go for the definition, for example, of Wikipedia, you have, so to say, the physical object, reality, in our case, some aspect of the biological world, an ecosystem, the population, a landscape, with all these processes and environmental conditions. And then you have a digital representation, which is a model. It can be a mechanistic simulation model, it can be a statistical model. And the defining feature of a digital twin that you have, what here is called communication channel between. What does that mean? The model, the digital representation, is regularly updated with sensory data to recalibrate or to account for the model's uncertainties. Yeah, so there's one digital twin which you all are familiar with, which is weather forecast. Weather forecast is based on very, very detailed and sophisticated models. But these models cannot capture the complexity and the nonlinearities in the atmosphere. So these models are, I don't know at what interval, probably hourly or daily, updated with sensory data, very, very detailed data about wind direction, temperature, precipitation, and whatnot. So this is, so to say, the basic idea. We achieve this high level of realism by regularly updating the model with sensory data. Sorry, I missed the wrong button. So the concept of digital twin comes from industry, from engineering. The first application was really in NASA, spacecrafts and manufacturing, engineering, for example, when you construct a turbine. So why would people invest a lot of money and time and energy into developing a model of a turbine? The reason is that it's still more cost effective to do all the tests and design things in the model rather than in reality. I've been told that BMW, when they develop a new factory for constructing electrical cars, the first thing they do, they construct it virtually. Yeah, so very often these digital twins are constructed before the real counterpart. And still, although the design of these systems is very well known, then linking the digital twin to the actual data of the system makes very much sense. But even for this engineered system, uncertainties are too high. So this is a very widely used and important concept in all these kinds of applications here. So you might realize that there are some specific challenges why this concept from engineering and manufacturing cannot be transferred one-to-one to ecology, to biodiversity. So on the left-hand side, you see the engineered systems. On the right-hand side, the ecological systems. Engineered systems are engineered by us. So in principle, we know all its components and we know how it works because we constructed it. So whereas ecological systems are engineered by nature, which is not entirely true, because virtually all ecological systems these days are also social ecological systems, but we also do not engineer social systems. So we have on the left-hand side full understanding of the behavior of the components in principle, whereas in ecology and social sciences, we have limited or even missing understanding. Digital twins of engineered systems are often, as I mentioned, constructed before the real system. Well, this is of course not possible in our case. And the sensors are often part of the digital twins design in engineering. Therefore, comprehensive near real-time data are available. Sensors and monitoring provide very sparse data in ecological systems. So data are limited, highly uncertain, and often incompatible. So you see that you cannot expect to really have this twin idea of very close realism implemented at the same level as people can do it in engineering. Therefore, we wrote at the very start of the BioDT project this article just to make sure, yes, it is a good idea to go for digital twins, but there are some specific limitations and challenges when we talk about ecology and biodiversity. So the point I want to make is while fully fledged DTs of biodiversity might be impossible, it's still worthwhile. So professionally developing infrastructure and workflows for regularly updating, recalibrating, and improving models with observation, that makes very much sense. And it is done only to a very limited extent so far in ecological modeling, because just the expertise is too fragmented and too many different disciplines. And of course, to do this with a clear application in mind, yeah, not just for a journal paper, but really think about the people who are going to use, who need actually support from this model. And this is so very timely and much needed. And that's the reason for this EU initiatives on digital twins and the overall campaign of Destination Earth or Destiny of the EU. So digital twins are developed currently, or prototypes of them, for the ocean, for the climate, and for biodiversity. These are the three pillars. So let's now come to the specific EU project BioDT. The purpose is within 3 years to develop, so to say, the infrastructure for developing digital twins. Nobody is expecting that we will fully develop digital twins within just 3 years, and that we also are able within 3 years to earn all the benefits from this coupling of data and models, but so to say, just get started and produce prototypes in the sense of a proof of concept. We started 2 years ago. We have 1 more year to go. It's a large group, I guess more than 50 people. I never counted them. Very diverse, many computer scientists, ecologists, data scientists, and then people like Rita and others for communication. So really, it's a very diverse and very well mixed group of people. And again, this definition within this concept is, again, the virtual space, a model, and the physical space, a real space. You have this data flow in one direction. But of course, at some point, we hope that the digital twin is then used to support decisions that feed back to the real world. We will show some example when we go to the pollinator example. In BioDT, you can see here this website. It's all very well documented there, thanks to the effort of Rita and colleagues and others. So we have what we called at the beginning 8 use cases. We call it now prototype digital twins. I won't go through all of them in detail. The status of them is quite diverse. In some cases, we started with an existing model, like in the pollinators example, which we will talk about today. In other cases, people had to take a model from the shelf from somewhere else, like an ecosystem services. And in other systems, they have to develop their model themselves, like in the crop wild relatives, where they use statistical models. So today about pollinators, and we started with the model BEEHAVE. The model was developed 10, 14 years ago by Matthias Becher. I was involved a little bit in that project, so I know it quite well. The purpose of the model was to explore the effects of multiple stressors of honeybees, not just bad weather or pesticides or forage gaps in the landscape, but the combination of them. Because we all know that bees under stress, wild bees are under stress, but also honeybees, diseases are very important. But a single factor has been very hard to identify. That's probably a combination of factors. And to be able to serve this purpose, representing multiple stressors, the model is driven by first principles. So by collecting nectar and pollen to have energy and proteins, and then consume it for all these things that honeybees are doing. So the model is very complex. It took Matthias about almost 4 years to develop and test it thoroughly. It presents 1 honeybee colony in a landscape. You can have artificial landscapes, but you can also import data representing the flowering fields in a radius of about 5 kilometers. It's freely available. You see the web link here, beehavemodel.net. It's using an open software platform, which is easy to learn and use, NetLogo. It's fully documenting. It comes with a manual and a guided tour. And actually, it has been used since in more than 20 or 25 publications for a very, very wide range of questions. So in a way, it was a successful project already. But of course, it has limitations when you think about the purpose of digital twins, and that's why we use it here in this context. So the spatial extent of BEEHAVE, as I said, is about 5 kilometers. This is way too small to support policies for regions or nations. Yeah, so we need really computing power to extend the model to, let's say, entire Germany, or at some point even entire Europe. For example, when it comes to the billions of euro which go into subsidies in agriculture, Are they really effective in increasing the resilience and the persistence of honeybees and wild pollinators? It's often not known, and at that scale, we really need computing power. The compilation of the map of floral resources around a hive or an apiary is really cumbersome. And you cannot do it by hand or manually or ad hoc for entire Germany. So really we need workflows here and also the right kind of data sources. Validation at the regional or national level, again, we need really comprehensive data here, which we so far have not used while working with BEEHAVE itself. And of course, the user interface is designed from the perspective of a scientist. It looks like the cockpit of a jumbo jet, very, very complicated, many options. This is not really helpful for, let's say, beekeepers or or other end users. So we need a web-based graphical user interface which really supports the application of BEEHAVE in different contexts. So the prototype digital twin is based on BEEHAVE. The details will be presented later in the next part of this webinar by Jürgen. We have now data input, weather, hive weights. We take them from the so-called TrachtNet, which is provided by a Bee Institute. And Christoph Otten is in the audience today here. Thank you, Christoph. More details later. And the management options which you can implement in the model is honey harvest and also treating against the varroa mite and controlling swarming. Land use scenarios, we could implement different cropping systems, crop rotations, flower strips, or re-establishment of semi-natural feed margins and hedgerows, and also, which has been done intensively by industry already with a new module for BEEHAVE, the use of pesticides. So how much pesticides is okay and where are the limits? The model, as I said, is BEEHAVE. We won't go into very much detail here. It's a complex model. Jürgen will say a little bit more about it. And very important, the users we have in mind are really, it's a wide range. Beekeepers can use it to train and to optimize disease management and harvest management. Regulators of pesticides can use it for risk assessment of pesticides. Policy developers can design cost and biodiversity effective EU-level subsidy schemes. Farmers, many farmers are actually very much interested in not only making money with the oilseed rape, but also support diversity. But of course, it's a cost question. And as we all know, honeybees is a charismatic species, very important. It's an important pollinator, and everybody is worried about honeybees and wild bees, of course. So how far did we get in just 2 years? We have a highly competent and motivated team of experts, which really is absolutely stunning. And these are the people that I mentioned on the first slide, and I will mention them again in a minute. We have different complementary expertise, high performance computing, all these scripts writing for the workflows, developing shiny apps for graphical user interface. Jürgen and I would never have been able to do this and also would have never gotten the resources to do so. So Jürgen will speak next about the achievement of this team. All this would not have been possible with the BioDT initiative and funding. So a summary of my part of this webinar is digital twin is a concept from engineering. The central idea, large-scale application in mind, regular update of model with sensory data. DTs of ecological systems are different, but the emerging workflows and the use of new data sources will move predictive modeling to the next level. I was very skeptical, I have to admit, when the project started or when we wrote the proposal, because the twin idea is kind of would be misleading and raise wrong expectations. But now after 2 years, I'm extremely grateful that I'm involved here. And keep in mind that BioDT provides prototypes, not yet the fully fledged twins that will take more time and effort, but we will, as we will also show today, will have proof of concept so that you get an idea and also have first use cases where you actually can use it. More details will be available very soon, I guess next month, on this journal, Research Ideas and Outcomes. And these are the main people here involved, but they are more on the background. Yeah, with this, I would like to end and stop my screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Volker. for providing a very general overview of both BioDT, but also the preliminary work that the entire team has done to also put into life the Pollinator's prototype digital twin. Now, I mean, after this general overview, I will pass the floor to Jürgen because he will instead go a little bit more in details, and he will explain also the Pollinator's prototype digital twin from a technical point of view. So Jürgen, now you can also start sharing your screen. Okay, perfect. Thanks. We see that it is coming. Perfect. So over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. And also thanks to Volker for this perfect introduction into the topic. And please give me a second to prepare myself. I will now talk about more in detail on the workflows that we've developed in this honeybee prototype digital twin. And I also want to thank the whole team. I mean, the people that we listed are what we call the core team that really developed the stuff that we present right now. But there are even more people involved in the whole project. So in the beginning, I would love to start stepping one step back, why we actually have chosen honeybees as a test species for, let's say, future digital twins of insect pollinators. Well, we had to start somewhere, and honeybees, I mean, I think we do not have to discuss. Honeybees are important pollinators for a lot of our agricultural goods, like oilseed rape. And at the very same time, they face multiple stresses. So starting from, I don't know whether you can see my cursor, but starting on the left, I put some of the stresses, the prominent ones here, starting from diseases transmitted by these pests, these varroa mites, weather, climate change, also extreme weather, beekeeping practices, also the surrounding landscape. I mean, in these large agricultural, monocultural areas, there might be food only available for a very short time. And then finally, pesticides. Volker had mentioned that already. But also importantly, there are tools and data available for honeybees. So we had a very good starting point with honeybees. And the impact of single stresses is well documented, at least in comparison to other insect species. And on the very same time, there's an urgent need for landscape assessment for the suitability of landscapes of honeybees on a large spatial extent, the national or even European extent. And then, of course, how honeybees deal with trends in climate and or land use. So we thought it's a perfect starting point with honeybees. And 2 years ago, actually, we started with this scheme, what we want to achieve within this project ideally. So, and Volker nicely introduced at the heart of the digital twin or the prototype digital twin is a model. And we utilize or use the BEEHAVE model. I will talk about that in a minute. We have input data that we can derive generically for the whole of Germany. And this input data, I will talk about that in more detail as well. But the most important input data that we need is land cover data. I put wrongly here land use data. Land cover data for the whole of Germany in a consistent way. Weather data is also important. And then, of course, the beekeeping practices are also play an important role. And also the land management if pesticides are applied or not. But this is not covered yet. Then from the model, we will get responses like the whole suite of responses the model is able to produce, like the number of adult bees or the produced honey, the flight activity, and so on. So we get a whole suite of information from our virtual honeybees. And then we were looking at the very beginning for a data source that we can confront our results with. And as Volker nicely already mentioned, we choose the stock weights that are measured in a measuring campaign by our colleagues at the Bee Institute. in many locations in Germany. I will also talk about that in a minute. So this is actually the workflow of the PDT, but what products we had in mind. And firstly, we had in mind to have a front end for users like beekeepers or bee institutes that are actually able to simulate a single hive at a specific location, at some arbitrary specific location in Germany. But as well, we wanted to have a tool that is able to run those simulations for the whole of Germany, which of course is computationally expensive. And this is why the PDT framework was so attractive for this use case. So having said that, why have we chosen the BEEHAVE model? Well, we think for digital twin, it's very, very important to have a mechanistic simulation model at its heart. And BEEHAVE was on the market. And as Matthias wrote on his starting page, BEEHAVE simulates the development of a honeybee colony and its foraging of nectar and pollen in different landscapes. And this is exactly what we were looking at for. And as Volker mentioned, it has been published 2014 in the Journal of Applied Ecology. It's freely available from this homepage. And what is really, really attractive, there's also a whole suite of model types that allows us then to expand our ideas to other species like bumblebees or even other bees for the beginning. It's a model that has been tested a lot and has been applied a lot. So we already have a community that is working with BEEHAVE, which is a great advantage. As Volker mentioned, it has been published, or applications of the model have been published in more than 20 articles, and it's reasonably frequently cited for a modeling study. So it's a product that has been tested and has been applied a lot, which is important because modeling is a lot about modeling is about trust as well, and this has been tested here. The model itself would be too complicated actually to introduce here in detail, but the great thing it's well documented, as Volker said, it's freely available. The main point I want to make here is that it has 3 compartments. We look at the demography of a colony with all its different life stages, larvae, eggs, adult bees. There's this foraging module that allows us to understand how bees collect nectar and pollen. And there's a disease module, which is also very helpful. And this is about diseases that are transmitted by this varroa mite, which is very prominent. Technically, it is a model that is, I think, of moderate size. It has 6,000 lines of source code. So it's something that you can really get a handle on. And it's programmed in NetLogo, what Volker has mentioned already. And this in the beginning was kind of a little bit of an obstacle because it's programmed in Java, but our technical colleagues found perfect solutions to be able to apply that in this context. Some words on the input data. Weather, Volker mentioned that already. Weather is important here in this context very much because it determines the foraging activity of honeybees. We do not consider weather in any other context. We need weather on a daily resolution. We choose whatever the user is choosing as a location. We choose the nearest weather station of the German weather forecast, the DWD. We need the variables maximum temperature, daily temperature, and the sunshine hours to determine the flight activity of bees. The problem with this kind of data is really that there's a lot of missing data. So in future, we might also take other data sources, but a great advantage is there's an API that is usable within this in the context of R, the statistical language R. This package is called RDVD, it's published, and this was very useful for our context to work with. So that was very nice. The other major input information that we need is the land cover data around a hive, as Volker nicely mentioned already. And this information is nowadays given in many products that are from remote sensing. And we started to use a German-wide land cover classification map that was done by Sebastian Breidel and colleagues and published in 2020. And the nice thing about this land cover map is that it has a higher spatial resolution of 20 meters, which is a very good resolution in our context. It contains 19 vegetation classes, mainly agricultural classes like oilseed, rape, wheat, and stuff. It is published, the data is published for 2016, but our colleagues are updating it with more recent data. And the plan is to update it annually, because with the digital twins, we say that the input data and the data is updated. So for this kind of data, this means it's updated, or it's planned to be updated every year. Now, having the land cover is one thing, but then translating it into floral resources is the other thing. And this, I would argue, is really work in progress, and this is really a community effort. And maybe such a digital twin can also help to bring information together. There is data on floral resources from the literature. There are databases from other European Union projects. In principle, there's more data on nectar than it is on pollen, and of course, but there is a crop non-crop bias. You will see that in a minute when Kata is presenting our prototype. Finally, we will work with a thing called lookup table, where we specify for a certain land cover, like oilseed rape, we specify by best guesses and information from the literature, the amount of pollen, the sugar concentration, the quantity of nectar, the time that it takes honeybees to actually extract on one trip this nectar and pollen, and then also a flowering start and a flowering end of this resource. And of course, this is a very critical information. And the nice thing in this digital twin, it's interactive. So the user can actually put his or her own knowledge and data into this table and explore what this actually means in the results, for the results. So what the model then actually reads in is such an input file. So because time is now progressing, I will not go into detail here, but this input file that actually the model and the prototype needs is structured that the information is given for each floral patch that contains resources, and for each day it's specified what amount of nectar and what amount of pollen is available, and how and the distance between the colony and its patch. And this input file results in files that are of 5 megabytes, let's say, for one specific site, depending on your input data or your landscape, of course. And this, of course, is not problematic if you look at one site, but if you want to model the whole of Germany, for instance, then you would have 3,500 of those input files, and that was really a hassle by doing the computation. But our colleagues, again, have nicely solved that issue. So that's the overview. So now, how can we confront what we simulate in the model with the data or real data? And this is where our colleagues from the Fachzentrum Bienen- und Imkerei come into this PDT. As Volker said, we look on the hive weight of different colonies in Germany, which are monitored daily. The data collection is done at a resolution of 5 minutes. So you can imagine at every point, red dot, there's a bee colony, and under this bee colony is a scale that is measuring the weight of this colony. And this is a very good proxy for the honey or nectar harvest of the colony. So if the weight goes up, that's a sign for the fact that honeybees bring in nectar. And And those are exemplary time series of this daily differences in the weight of the different colonies. And this is like for 1 year, 2020, all the different, on the very right and the third panel here, the colony weight. This is the aggregated daily changes of the colony weight. And this varies a lot for Germany. So there is at least, it's obvious that this signal is very variable and that will be hard to capture, but that's really, really valuable data, which is available for many years. So, and this arrow now, this is the workflow that I presented: input data, calibration data, model responses. Now, this link is about the computation actually to the front end that Kata will present you in a minute if I finally come to an end. And then also we want to compute these vitality maps, or this information for the whole of Germany. And therefore you will in a minute see the graphical user interface that the colleagues have implemented for this workflow. And we put this process already on an HPC infrastructure. What comes next? We need to calibrate our PDT against this data that I presented to you. We will allow to tailor these applications in the proto digital twin for user types, because we had a workshop and we identified that the generic model or the standard model might be not sufficient for all the user groups that we want to address. And with that, I want to hand over to Kata, and thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jürgen. So now, as Jürgen was also mentioning, Kata will provide general, explanation and a simulation of how the prototype digital twin works. So Kata, if you want, you can also start sharing your screen, and so that people can understand also a little bit better how it works.
Thank you, Rita. I hope that you'll all see my screen now, maybe.
Yes,
probably should. Good. All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Kata. Also, greetings from Finland. I'm working in CSC as a software developer. I joined BioDT in January, and I am part of the technical platform, also known as the Shiny App development team. It has been very interesting and educational journey so far, and I'm crediting all my colleagues who have been working with me building this Shiny app, and those who have started the development of it. But yeah, I am really happy to be here today to show you the new interface and the technical platform. Just a second. Good. Quick words first before we go to the app itself. About the redesign and development process. Our aim was to make the new interface more user-friendly and usable. And these things presented here are kind of the key points that we wanted to achieve with the redesign process. Just a second. But like things like resemblance to the original BioDT UI pages, so that one understands the connection between these two, and also to make the app more modern looking and more pleasing for the eyes, and add better instructions on how to operate and move around the app. So because the original version didn't really have anything, so it was confusing for experienced user as well as for totally new user on how to do things at all. But yeah, then I would like to show you the app itself. So I will stop my screen share for a second, and if Rita could provide the link to the app itself, but I will also show it on my screen. So if you don't want to operate or try things on your own, you can just watch what I'm doing here. you should probably now see my screen for the app itself. So here we landed to our landing page, which will in the future have all the other PDTs also presented here. But for the time being, that this is the first PDT release, we only have the pollinators here today. And yes, they will present here in their own cards. Here is the link to the prototype. If it doesn't work for you, the link here, you can also access it via here, the main menu. The first page that is opened is the info page that will like tell about PDT itself, maybe in more technical or researchable point of view. I'm not going to go in deep into this text as I'm not a professional in the area and I am more building the software itself. So you are free to explore that on your own time. But I guess what we all have been waiting for is the prototyping page itself. So everything in the prototype page here is distributed to their like own cards, which will have their own tasks. And at the end of the page is the result card, or where the simulation will be shown. Just to kind of go a little walkthrough here. Here are the instructions themselves. But everything starts from the input map, where the user needs to kind of choose their location where they want the prototype to be calculated. A note here that the place needs to be selected inside Germany area. You can't do it elsewhere, unfortunately for now. And then the user needs to select the simulation parameters. I think these are pretty easy to understand. Well, they are made for someone who knows what they want to adjust or put here. And everything is like really based on removing the tooltips and selecting the wanted checkpoints or whatever they are doing on their BEEHAVE research. And then the last part is the lookup table. And as Jürgen said before, everything here is kind of based on previous studies and best guesses. So we highly encourage you or the user to kind of use their own values or what they know better, or just if you want to experiment things, then it's also doable. When all these are filled, the run simulation button will activate, and then you can start the simulation. The simulation takes a few minutes, maybe it depends on what kind of values you have put there. So I'm not going to run the simulation now, but I'm going to show you the example experiment that we have here. So the outcome of the input values will be this. And if you want to search something specific, you can just hover over with your mouse to see any values from specific date or specific time or whatever you want to kind of see from here. The experiments will be listed here when they are ready, and you can like change them and compare them to each other. And of course, you are able to download the blood data to yourself. But yeah, that's pretty much about the prototype itself. I would also like you to go and see our very professional contributors to this building, and also see our acknowledgement page, because this is a very large project. We would like to everyone know who is involved. and to kind of show them love on how much we have done for this project and how far we have come so far. But yeah, that's about the app itself. I will change back to my slides quickly so that we don't have, so that we will have time for the questions also. But just quick words from the user story workshop we did before. We made a user story workshop to kind of gain better understanding on our user or target user groups and what do they want and need. And here are the results of the workshop itself. So our main target are the beekeepers and the scientists, and we have developed the front end or interface so that all these like needs and wants would be fulfilled and satisfied. Then just to quickly show you that what we started from was this, and I think we can all agree that this might be a little hard to understand on how to go forward with the prototype. And I started the kind of redesign process by doing an heuristical evaluation. And based on the evaluation results, we came here. So I'm pretty pleased on what we have done with the front-end side and very much what we have accomplished with the back-end side or the computational side. But also, as we are not ready yet and there are lots more to come, the future shiny app steps would be again better accessibility for users with some special needs, because we want to provide the information and spread the awareness of pollinators to everyone, as well as biodiversity, but also to make the app more mobile friendly and also develop the elements or components that are shown in the user interface to be as easy as, or maintain the easiness to use them or make them even more easy to use. But also there will be more PDTs to integrate with the others and interact with others as well as users. And maybe there will be more features on the pollinators or honeybee PDT also. But yeah, that's all that I have now. Thank you all for listening, and it has been very nice to see how many have come here today to listen our webinar, and I hope you all enjoyed this so far.
Thank you, Kata, also for providing a simulation of the prototype digital twin. Now I'm also checking the time, and I see that we are perfectly on time also with the presentation. So it is also difficult from time to time to also keep the path here, but you were all very clear, and at the same time you were also summarizing the main concepts today. Now, we still have a couple of minutes where we can also address some questions to our speakers. So if any of the attendees would like also to ask anything, feel free. In the meantime, maybe while we're also waiting for, let's say, the attendees also to maybe raise the hand or type in any questions, I might start with some questions. And maybe, Kata, the first one that I will ask is for you. Because let's say now you have presenting the prototype digital twin for the pollinators, but we know that in BioDT we are also developing other prototype digital twins. So maybe something that can be useful for others is if, for example, we are always gonna use the shiny app also for the other prototype digital twins, and if the structure that you have presented today will be similar also for any other prototype digital twins.
Yeah, so we have kind of developed this design model that we will provide with every PDT, so that we maintain that everything looks pretty much the same. Everyone knows how to use everything, and so that things do not change in every PDT, but also, well, the information can change based on the PDT itself, but the UI itself doesn't change much, so that it will maintain easy to use and easy to understand.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kata, also for explaining this. I see that in the meantime, we got a question from Nina from the Academy. So thank you also for asking this. And this is actually for both Volker and Jürgen, I would say. So I will address it to both of you. And she's asking, how are the planning to approach non-social pollinators and non-hymenoptenar pollinators like butterflies, for example? In the pollinators prototype digital twin. I don't know if Volker or Jürgen would be the first one to reply.
Maybe I can start.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, it's in the beginning, it's always a question of resources, but we're already planning to expand it to species groups where we also have to consider the habitat aspect, which we do not have to consider with honeybees, and this is bumblebees. So we slightly now expand this very same approach to bumblebees. But to be honest, then to go beyond, bumblebees will take some time to adapt the model, find the right data, and to adapt the whole process, because it's not that generic to my view that we now can easily assign it to very different insect groups. But the plan is, as a first step towards other species, we will expand it to bumblebees. And maybe Volker, you may add your.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the reasons why we use honeybees is, of course, because so much is known. We have so much data about them, and also because they are used commercially. So it's in this public interest. But we get these questions about wild bees all the time. That's a very relevant question. And so Matthias Becher has also developed BeeHAVE, so which has a similar rationale. So we are working on that right now. And as for solitary bees, there is a recent model developed by Amelie Schmolke, a former colleague of us, who is also here, one of the participants. But there, of course, the data needed are completely different, right? Because they have a smaller radius, they need different resources, and they have specific habitat requirements. So that's, I still think we can transfer a lot of the knowledge and experiences we gained in the project, but it's not a one-to-one thing.
So most probably what we can do is actually to create a new prototype digital twin also for other species of pollinators.
Yes.
That can anyway also learn from what has been already developed now for the honeybees. Okay, thank you. Actually, we also got another question from Gabriela, and she's asking, what is the challenge preventing the model to be expanded to all Europe and to the world? Who would like to take this one? I don't know, Volker, if you want to.
I can start, and Jürgen can then extend.
Perfect.
It has to do, of course, with the data sources. Yeah, so this land cover map, which Jürgen mentioned, this is developed by colleagues of us at the Helmholtz Center in Leipzig. This is just covering Germany, but similar maps are used by other groups as well, also for Europe. So on that side, there's no principal limit, but it's a question of effort and data handling, because it's pretty heavy computational effort which is required. The other thing is this hive weight data. We have them for Germany, partly for Denmark, a little bit for Scandinavia, but there might be similar data sources in other countries, but we don't have an overview. On the model side, the limitation is that so far it is not really adapted for different climatic zones. And there are first attempts, right, to, for example, make the egg laying rate really driven by weather and by the availability of foraging resources. This has been done in a recent study by Dominic Lammers, who is also here today. So some additional effort would be needed. Again, I think what we learned could be transferred, but we might need to use other data sources, and also the model needs some more development.
Yeah, but thanks for Volker for this brilliant answer. I mean, one anecdote, I mean, from Amelie, who is here, I learned that for instance, some weather information is not even available then for other parts of the world, like the sunshine hours. It's not available in the same way for the US than it's for Germany, for instance. So they are these little nasty technical obstacles that Volker nicely presented. And the modeling side is also like heat. In Germany, we don't deal with an upper limit of temperature, but of course in the Mediterranean, there's also an upper limit of the temperature where bees are active. So it's in the very same line that Volker said. In principle, it's doable, but there's much more of these little nasty technical details. And of course, the Corina data would be a data set that is available for the whole of Europe, but then this comes in a different temporal resolution. So there was a decision to be made whether we want to have an annual update of the data or whether we want to go to the European scale from the very beginning. And we have chosen to have a higher temporal resolution, but then being on the national scale. So these are the decisions we made.
So it is anyway always a question of, let's say, resources and, let's say, also costs that you have to also apply, because I mean, obviously, I mean, whenever you're developing models, such a complex model like this one, you also, I mean, have to take into consideration the involvement also of resources, but it was clear. Thank you both, Volker and Jürgen. Actually, I see that we still have time for a last question that was in the meantime shared by the Salem. Is actually asking two different questions. I will read both of them. And the first one is, how do you measure the weight of the colony? And then the second one is this one. So while the weather is important, he believes that the plant phenology around the hives is also crucial. So he would like to know if it is possible to plan, say, producing a satellite image-based NDVI, digital twin, at certain frequency. And then, I mean, he wants to say, for example, it is possible to have it on weekly basis. So then also, he wants to know, I mean, the frequency that you are also evaluating here.
So maybe, Volker, you want to start with the weight of the hive because you are doing that?
I think this was actually more general. How do you measure the colony? So we have different. Was it a question about the data that we use or the output of the model? Anyway, this hive weight data, of course, the colonies are sitting on scales, and the scales are very precise, and they send the data to this Bee Institute on a regular basis. And there are also corrections, so any weight change within 5 minutes, which is larger than 200 grams, is probably due to some manipulations of the beekeeper. Of course, is all monitoring data, they have their own problems, but they're not very well correlated and so on. Was that your question, Desalegn? If not, we have also, of course, colony size, we have honey stores in total, but this is much more fragmented. What we really want to have is data which covers, so to say, a large area. And so this is the best we have. The second question, maybe Jürgen can deal with, is about the phenology of the plants, if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we know that, I mean, the thing that we would like to couple is the phenology and the weather data that we have, because of course we know that oilseed rape, for instance, is a prominent example. It will change the flowering start with the weather. We can see that every day. This is not yet been done, so you have to put it manually, the flowering start, flowering end, for the time period you're interested in. So this is nothing automatic, but we are aware that data on phenology is, of course, also available. Then using the NDVI, I mean, this is a whole field. I mean, the NDVI, as we know, is measuring the greenness of something. So then we would have to translate the greenness of something. And of course, there's a lot of research on that. NDVI in connection to a lot of things, but that would cause a lot of uncertainty. So maybe in future, but not as a next step. Then going to weekly resolution, so changing the temporal resolution is always also a little bit tricky, but in principle it's doable. The model can do it easily, of course, but then you have to also rescale your input data, of course. I mean, and that's the weather data, but of course also you can average the weather data with some statistical measures. So in principle, that's not an issue. So this is what we have in mind, I think.
Perfect. Thank you, Jürgen, Volker, and Kata, also for replying to the live questions. I hope, I mean, also for all the attendees of the webinar who is insightful. And I also remind you also to start testing the Pollinator's prototype digital twin. So it is now open, and if you have, I mean, we would really like also to hear any feedback from you about this. As we were mentioning before, more prototype digital twins will be developed in the next couple of months. So always follow us also to understand exactly when the next prototype digital twins will be available. And yeah, as also Volker was mentioning, feel free also to contact us in case you have any more questions also in the future. The recording of the webinar anyway will be available. So if you want also to have a refresher of how this or the Pollinator's prototype digital twin works, you can do by watching it again online. So thank you again, everyone. And I wish all of you a very nice World Biodiversity Day. Bye-bye.